Welcome back to Ghana Songs TV. I'm Bright.
I'm Ro.
And I'm Chine. Today's episode is a little different from what we usually do, and we want to say that up front. This weekend, Ghana said a final goodbye to Ebo Taylor, and we felt his story deserved more than a passing mention.
So, for anyone who doesn't know the name, Ebo Taylor passed away back in February this year at Saltpond Hospital at 90 years old. His final funeral rites were held this weekend on Saturday the 1st of August at Victoria Park in Saltpond, with the Thanksgiving service and the final rites wrapping up yesterday and today. The Musicians Union of Ghana sent a delegation, and they didn't just show up to talk. They handed the family a cash donation of 5,000 cedis to help with funeral costs. And the guest list tells you everything about how much this man meant to the industry. Gyedu-Blay Ambole was there, Pet Thomas, reggae star Rocky Dauni, Apegu Santana representing the Ghana Tourism Authority. That's not a small gathering. That's the industry closing ranks for one of its own.
And honestly, if you only know Ebo Taylor as a name attached to old Highlife records, you're missing most of the story. This is a man with a 6-decade career, going back to the Stargazers and the Broadway Dance Band in the 50s. He was in London in the 60s, working alongside Fela Kuti and the saxophonist Peter King. And that period is genuinely part of how Afrobeat came together as a sound. Highlife rhythm meeting jazz and funk. People talk about Fela as the father of Afrobeat, and that's fair. But Ebo Taylor was in that room too, shaping the same sound from the Ghanaian side. I think that's the part that gets flattened in how we tell this history. It wasn't one genius working alone. It was a whole generation of West African musicians trading ideas across borders. And Ebo Taylor was right at the center of that exchange.
That's a really fair point because his catalogue didn't stay stuck in the past either.
Not even close. His track Heaven got sampled by Usher on She Don't Know with Ludacris. Black Eyed Peas used his work. So did Kelly Rowland, Jidenna, Vic Mensa, Rapsody. That's a Ghanaian Highlife record from decades ago, still showing up on major American records in the 21st century. And he wasn't done. He put out a song called Obra Akedzi, meaning Gift of Life, at 88 years old, and he had a full album called Jazz is Dead, scheduled for release in October. He literally launched his own music festival one day before he passed. This was a man working right up until the end, not someone coasting on old glory.
What stood out to me reading through the coverage of the funeral is something MUSIGA said. They closed their tribute by promising to do more for Ghana's living legends, to recognize and support veteran musicians before they're gone, so people actually get to see their own contributions celebrated while they're still here to witness it. And I'll be honest, that line hit me, because it's a pattern we see constantly in music, not just in Ghana, everywhere. An artist spends decades building something, influencing people who never even credit them properly, and the big outpouring only shows up at the funeral. Ebo Taylor at least got some of that recognition while he was alive, with the resurgence in sampling and the festival bearing his name. But MUSIGA basically admitted publicly that the industry needs to do this earlier and more often. I think that's worth sitting with, not just as a tribute to him, but as something the whole Ghanaian music industry should actually act on.
It's a fair challenge to put back on the industry, honestly. And it connects back to something bigger. Ghanaian highlife doesn't always get talked about with the same reverence as Afrobeat does right now, even though a lot of what's popular today is standing on rhythms that Ebo Taylor and his generation built decades ago.
Exactly. And that's why we wanted to give this its own space today, instead of folding it into a quick headline. Rest well to Ebo Taylor. 90 years, 6 decades of music, and an influence that's still audible in records coming out right now.
If you want to hear his voice in his own words, look up the old BBC interviews with him talking about his career. There's real insight there about how Highlife and Afrobeat grew up together. And if this kind of deeper look at the artists behind Ghanaian, Nigerian, and South African music is something you want more of, subscribe so you don't miss it.
This has been Ghana Songs TV. We'll see you.